Alright guys, welcome. It's Monday. We're going to get kicked off this week with a tutorial. We're going to go ahead and go over the basics of electricity. I hear the question over and over again, what are some easy ways to do electric, or can somebody come and help me wire up my base? So I'm going to do a few tutorials. This first one's going to be a basics of electricity in Rust. We're going to go over the generators, we're going to go over the switches, and we're going to go over all the pass-throughs and then the batteries. So hopefully everybody will get a better understanding of what you need to work with electricity in Rust. So starting off, you're going to want to have a wire tool. A wire tool is easily made. It does require a workbench, but it takes 2 high-quality metal. You have to have this to do any type of wiring in the electric. Secondly, you have to be on TC, be authorized on the TC to do any type of electrical wiring. So what you have here first, you're not going to see on a lot of servers, but I threw it in here so that everybody would know it's there. It's what's called a test generator. The admins can use mods or change up the output voltage, but majority of the time they put out a solid 100 power, and your input or your output is right here. This one, sky's the limit on this one, but it's got tons of outputs on this side, but this is just from mods. This is not what you will see on majority of the servers you're on. Next, you're going to have a solar panel. This is the large solar panel. You have a basic output of 20 whenever it is collecting power from the sun. The main thing with these is you cannot have shadows. Right now it's putting out 20. If I put a wall right here, which is not going to let me do because of the windmill, you have no power coming out of it. If it is covered, you will lose power. But even if you have a little bit of sun hitting it, it will still generate power. Alright, secondly, you have your small generator. You've got these, you gotta turn off, turn on. They do a max output of 40 volts. Usually these are used for raid bases, for powering your turrets at your raid base. Takes low grade fuel. It's pretty efficient. There's a couple circuits you can use for these to turn on, turn off. We'll get more in detail in that later in the tutorials, but for today, you can use these in a pinch if you don't have solar panels. Or the next one, you've got your wind turbine. I deleted that one, but depending on what height you put your turbine at depends on what type of power it's going to get. Whereas this one is putting out 54 volts, 58 volts. It's not a constant. It does change and vary. This one up here puts out 62, 66. So it does change, and this is as tall as I can build on this server, and it is a max output of 122 right now. I have seen it at 137. You can get it a little bit different, but depending on your base, and how high you put your windmill depends on how much power you're going to get out of it. So now we're going to get into the battery section of the electric. Your batteries are intricate in the fact that even if your power source is destroyed and while you're being raided, your auto turrets, your SAM sites will stay on and help defend your base. So using them is a must. Your large batteries have an output voltage of 100 volts, constant, as long as you've got power in them. Your medium is 50, and your small is 10. Smalls you're not going to use for much except for maybe a cheap lighting system. But your batteries only charge at 80% capacity. 80% efficiency. So if you've got 100 volts going into this battery, you're only theoretically using 80 volts to charge it, if that makes sense. So what you're doing is you want to overcharge this battery in effect, running about 120 plus into it. Most people, that's why we stick to wind turbines, so that you've got a constant output and never have to worry about it. Also, I never put my batteries above 67-ish max active usage. You want to keep it below 70, just my opinion. I'm sure there's a lot of different thoughts and comments out there, but that way it doesn't drain your battery too fast. The medium batteries you can use in a pinch, but I would rather stick to the large. The large takes 10 high qual and 2 tech trash to craft. The medium takes 1 tech trash and 5 high qual, and then the small takes 5 high qual. This is a change. It used to not take tech trash to make it. Alright guys, the next part of this tutorial in electronic basics, we're going to go over the components. I'm going to mention 2 of them that we're not going to go in detail on, because until you know more about electricity, I wouldn't even mess with them. They're the memory cell, and you got the RAN switch. They are used for very complex logic circuits. No reason to worry about them. The main ones you're going to use are the root combiner, the branch, and the blocker. So the root combiner is exactly what it sounds like. You're taking 2 power sources and combining them. Right now I've got the large battery, or the medium battery, and the small battery, both hooked into it, with 50 coming out of the medium, 10 coming out of the small, so 60 coming out of my root combiner. Your branch is exactly what it sounds like. You're branching off power to different sources. So you've got 3 plugins on it. You've got your input and then 2 outputs. Excuse me. You've got your branch output and you've got your power output. So your branch you can set to whatever you want. As long as you've got the power coming in, it'll go out. So right now we've got a gazillion power coming in. We only want 10 out. So I've got, you hold or press E while looking at it with your wire tool out. It'll come up with a little menu. You're going to set your branch to what you want. In this case, we're going to set it to 10 and we're going to hit set. It defaults to 2. So if you want it different than 2, you have to change it. And then we can just plug that into anywhere. And we've got 10 power going there. Pretty simple. Your power out, everything that you didn't branch off goes out your power out, and you can continue the circuit. Your your blocker, what it does is it blocks your power coming to your output if you have power going to your pass-through. This is how you create some of the complex circuits and some of the non-complex ones, like night lights and stuff. So if you have power going to your blocked pass-through, you've got nothing coming out. But if you don't have power, you've got full power coming out. And it doesn't take much. Right now I've got 10. I can set this to 2. And it blocks all power coming out. That's how you use a nightlight. The automated nightlights on this server. But it's a pretty basic. Now all 3 of these components, the branch and the blocker, use 1 volt each. So if you have a branch or a blocker in your system, it uses 1. So you got to take that into account if you're running like 2 auto turrets. You've got to make sure you got at least 21 volts coming to this, or one of them's not going to work. The next one that we're going to look at is the splitter. The splitter is a little tricky. I'm going to go ahead and just set something up here real quick. We're going to use 3 branches. So right now we've got 31 volts coming in. So if I plug into this output and I take it over here to this first branch, I've got 30 volts because again, this uses 1 volt. But if I want to plug in 2 items, then they're going to split equally across the 2 active outputs. So my 30 drops to 15. It's going to cut it directly in half. Now if I want to plug in my third, bet you we all can guess what happens. It's going to drop it to 10. Now these aren't used very much unless you have items like auto turrets that you can use all 3 outputs and just branch off a certain amount of power to this splitter to be able to wire those up. But they do come in handy. I prefer branches, but you do lose a lot more of your volts through using multiple branches than you would if you just use 1 splitter if you've got 3 items that take the same amount of voltage. Alright guys, we're going to go ahead and move into switches, starting with the most basic switch. It is just like a light switch in your house. You tap E to turn it on, you tap E to turn it off. It's got an input, an output, and a switch on and a switch off if you want to use an output source to toggle it as like a button or another switch or what have you. But we'll get more in detail in that in later episodes. Next, you're going to have your smart switch. Same basic concept as the regular switch, but this one you can use with the Rust Plus app. You connect your phone with the app, and with the server you're on, if it's supported, you can turn the switch on and off from your phone. It's great for SAM sites, auto turrets, if somebody's not on when you set them up, or you're getting ready to fly and you get to the roof and you're like, man, I forgot to turn all the SAM sites off. I don't want to have to run back down. Let me just turn it off with my phone. It's a great resource to have, and a lot of people are using them. It does take tech trash to make it though. Now we're going to move into our more complex switches. Right here you're looking at what is called an AND switch. An AND switch, when you look it up in the crafting menu, a logic gate that allows electrical pass-through if both inputs receive power. Pass-through amount is the greater of either source of power. So what it is, if you got 2 power sources coming in, you've got to have 2 power sources coming in, but you can have 1 volt on this and 100 on this one, and it'll pick 100 to come out. Now your OR switch is a little different. It's a switch that allows voltage pass through if either of the inputs have voltage. Like right now you got 72 and 75. You've got 74 coming out. It doesn't matter which one, but it will pick the larger power input of the two to output. Now, just like the basic components, these take one power to operate. So you're going to lose one power going through it. Next, you have your XOR switch, which is the logic switch that allows voltage pass through if only one has power. Both of these have power. As you see, the light's red, so there's no output. If I take this off, this one's red, and now you have output. There's different logic circuits, including the memory cell and the RAM switch that you can use with these. But they're really complex, and I suggest not using either of these three switches. Not just yet. Right here is your basic timer. These are used for time activated circuits, just like a timer on your phone. You hold E to set the time. You can set it to whatever you want. This is in seconds. Right now I've got it set to 5. I set the duration. I activate. You can watch the timer spin around, and once it gets to 5 seconds, it'll turn off. There's some complex systems that we'll go over in the future that will allow you to turn this on and off automatically, and you won't have to touch it. There's a lot that you can do in Rust. I still think they have some improvements to make, but there's a lot that you can do. But that's all I've got today, guys. Remember, tomorrow, live on Twitch, we will be streaming. We're going to do a little bit of PvP with some buddies. Please, you're welcome to join us. As far as watching us, we'd love to see you there. But as always, have a good day and appreciate your time.